Hello, everyone. My name is Zev Brodsky. I'm the product marketing manager at Silverfort. Welcome, and thank you for joining our customer workshop on Entra ID. We're going to give a few more people to join and dial in. So in the meantime, we'll go over some housekeeping items. This is a live webinar, and with as many live sessions, we depend on broadband. If you find yourself disconnected, don't worry, you can reconnect quickly. The reason why we're doing this live is so you have the chance to interact with us, as we want to make this a very interactive session. So if you have questions along the way, please fill it in our Q&A button on the panel, and we'll get to them. And we'll also have a Q&A session at the end of the workshop. The session will be recorded and will be shared with you after the webinar with the recorded webinar and other collaterals that relate to our Entra ID integrations. With further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Ron Kago. Ron is a product manager at Silverfort and will help me navigate today's webinar topic, Entra ID. Ron, thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Zev, for this introduction. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our Entra ID Bridge webinar. My name is Ran, and I'm a product manager here at Silverfort. As part of my responsibilities, I'm also responsible for Silverfort integrations with Microsoft. I hope that this would be a great learning experience for all of you. And let's make this valuable and educational session for everyone involved. Feel free to ask questions, as I've said, on the chat, and we will hopefully answer them all. So let's dig in. So we will go over the following points. What is Entra ID? We will talk about Silverfort's integrations with Entra ID. What is the bridge integration? Why is it valuable for you? How does it work? The authentication flow, how to configure the integration, where you can find more information, and of course, questions and answer and feedback at the end. Zev, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ron. So Entra ID, before we get into it, in the end, it's renaming of Azure AD. While it has the new name, it's the same product we know and love. So it's really, it's not a new product. It's just a renaming of a part of their Entra suite. So what is Microsoft Entra ID? It's Microsoft's cloud-based IAM solution, identity access and management. It's a directory and identity management service that operates in the cloud and offers authentication and authorization services to various Microsoft services that most of you are using, like 365, Azure, and other cloud-based applications. It also serves as a central hub for managing identity security and compliance controls across different organizations' IT infrastructure. Now that we went over Entra ID, so how does it work with Silverfort? So we have different use cases, different integrations that we work with Entra ID. Ron will dig a bit deeper into some of those use cases, but so let me go over a few. Silverfort bridging. So Ron will explain that a little more deeper. Extending Entra ID security controls to any resource. This integration, you have the opportunity to really extend all of the different security controls within Entra ID across, including MFA, conditional access, including to all resources that didn't support it before. For example, homegrown and legacy apps, IT infrastructures, file shares, database, command line access tools, and more. With this integration, you have the opportunity to really centralize all your different identity protection all in one place, and from your on-prem and in your cloud, while in Entra ID. While the users are getting a consistent experience across all the resources. Before Ron dives into the integrations, I just want to give a quick reminder: Silverfort is on the Azure Marketplace, and if you could leave a review and rate us, that would be super helpful, as we are trying to expand our presence there. So yeah, now back to you, Ron.
Thank you, Zev. Let's go on some Entra ID basics. So first of all, in Entra ID, everything is an application. Applications could be assigned with different security controls like conditional access, number matching, and so much more. Let's see an example of how it's worked. So we have a user that's trying to access to a cloud application like Salesforce, Office 365, or Zoom. But before the authentication is approved, the application is first checked against the Entra ID security controls, for example, number matching. And basically, that's the way Entra ID works in the most simple way that we can explain. Silverfort has three main integrations with Entra ID by Microsoft: custom control, signing logs, and the bridge, which is the integration that we mostly talked about today. But before that, I would like to introduce you the first two integrations. So the custom control, this is our first integration with Entra ID. It allows you to add MFA to an Entra ID authentications by using any Silverfort supported token, like our mobile application, Okta tokens, Duo, and so on. It also allows you to incorporate the Silverfort on-premise risk score to impact Entra ID authentication. You should use this integration when you want to use a non-Entra ID MFA authenticator for Entra ID logs. And also when you want that Silverfort's risk engine to be the brain behind the scene and have the final word of the decision whether this authentication is legitimate or not. Of course, you can learn more how to configure this integration and also read more about that on our documentation portal by using the following path, or just contacting your customer success manager that will join to a call to explain more. Let's go over to the second integration. Our second integration is the signing logs, which basically gives you the ability to see all native Entra ID authentication requests in Silverfort admin console, which is pretty much cool to see cloud and on-prem authentication at the same place. It also allows you to get Entra ID authentication risk indicators, which is nice, and to create unified and normalized authentication logs on-prem and cloud, as we already mentioned. We recommend every customer that has Entra ID and Silverfort to use that integration in order to make the unified experience of identity security. And also here you can learn more about this integration and how to configure it by reading on our documentation portal or using calling your customer success manager for further details. All right, so now let's talk about the third integration and our main topic for today, the bridge integration. But before that, we should talk a little bit more about one of the main challenges in the identity and access management world, the hybrid environment. So modern enterprise IT environments include different resources, from legacy IT infrastructure to SaaS and web applications. This has required enterprises to deploy multiple IAM solutions such as Entra ID to manage their on-prem and cloud environments. But where our problem starts? It starts when Entra ID protects cloud, SaaS, and web application only with conditional access and Entra ID MFA, while on-prem enterprise resources authentication protocols do not natively support Entra ID. This creates a critical identity protection gap that has not been addressed until today. So welcome to the bridge. In this webinar, we will examine enterprise hybrid environments and the identity protection gap they present. You will hopefully learn how Silverfort enables organizations to overcome security gaps and create a unified security experience. We will introduce Silverfort Entra ID Bridge, which is, in my opinion, the ideal solution that allows you to extend Entra ID MFA and conditional access to all of your on-prem resources while configuring all access policies from Entra ID console. So let's start from the beginning. What is the bridge integration? Basically, in one sentence, is the ability to take an on-prem Active Directory authentication and protect it with Entra ID identity security control, like a custom control, like a conditional access, number matching, phone calls, SMS, and all the known methods. For example, with the bridge, you will be able to protect your PowerShell tools, which are working on the on-prem environment, and they will trigger a number matching, which is MFA on Entra ID. With a bridge integration, you can apply Azure SSO to on-prem and legacy endpoints that would otherwise be beyond the scope of Entra ID, but which can be protected only by Silverfort. So the best thing to do now is to see how it works visually. So this is a video that's trying to summarize what is this integration. So let's see an example with PowerShell tools. So here the user tries to run a PowerShell in the on-premise Active Directory. Silverfort's bridge policy is triggered, and we can see an MFA request made by Microsoft Authenticator. The user clicks on the signing, and now he's getting the Entra ID number matching. He put the number on the MS Authenticator, and then the MFA approved, and now he can use the PowerShell as he wants. So you can see here that he can run the commands and get the information that he needs. So this is how we protect PowerShell with the bridge in order to prompt Entra ID methods like number matching. If you have any questions until now, please feel free to use the chat, and we will hopefully answer all of them. All right, let's take it a step back and talk why is it valuable for you to use. So the first reason is that it gives you the ability to create a central policy management on Entra ID console. You can leverage Entra ID security controls for legacy resources that using on-prem protocols like NTLM, NLDAP, and so on. The second reason is that it really simplifies cloud migration projects. You can quickly secure applications without changing any configurations or without the need to re-architect them. Lastly, there is no user friction here. You can use pre-enrolled tokens by Microsoft like MS Authenticator or number matching without the need to deploy other tokens for your organization or employees. All right, so we saw that we can protect PowerShell and command line interfaces with the bridge, but let's see what else is an option for us. With the bridge, you can actually protect resources that could never have been protected before, such as legacy and homegrown applications, command line access tools like remote shell, PowerShell, SSH, industrial and healthcare system, file share databases, and many more. How does it work? So it basically really simple. First, you should choose any legacy application or on-prem resource that you can protect with Silverfort. After that, you need to create Silverfort policy that includes an Azure SSO as an action. Once the policy is configured, Silverfort creates an Entra ID enterprise application as if it was a modern web application. Once the application object is created on the Entra ID console, you can view it there with Silverfort icon. From Entra ID perspective, this object is a SaaS application like any other cloud-based application that you already have on your Entra ID console. By configuring an access policy for the application object, you can utilize Entra ID conditional access and MFA for this resource, which is basically an on-prem resource. Completing this process for all your bridge on-premises resources ensures you have consolidated hybrid resources on Entra ID. So this is how it looks like. You can see the admin console, the Entra ID console, sorry, with all those applications with the Silverfort logo, which basically represent on-prem resources like databases, remote PowerShell tools, and more. This is how each one of them looks like.
Hey, Rand, we have two quick questions.
Yeah.
For bridging to Silverfort, support Radius and ADFS apps?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, we can we support ADFS and Radius with the bridge. You just need to create the right policy. It's actually one of the most common use case for our customers. They like the Radius and the ADFS integration.
Okay, awesome. And then the second question before we move on is, Can the bridging help in efforts to MFA max?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Can the bridging help in efforts to MFA max? MAC?
Actually, it's a great question. I need to figure it out, and I will come back offline to the customer who asked that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, let's keep moving. So in terms of the admin user experience post Entra ID bridging, now any resource access attempt is monitored and protected by Silverfort. The admins have the ability to manage, monitor, and protect all their bridge application in the Entra ID console. Additionally, they can apply authentication and access policies to all their cloud, on-prem, and non-web application from the same place, which is the Entra ID console. But what about the end user experience? So actually, it remained the same. The end user will have the same Entra ID authenticating experience as before. They will continue to log in directly to the resource they are requesting to gain access to. But now each access attempt to a bridge resource will trigger an Entra ID policy that is passed and enforced by Silverfort. The users can approve their identity using any supported and enrolled Entra ID authentication method, just like the regular Entra ID applications, like Salesforce or any cloud application. And if Entra ID approves the access request, Silverfort allows the original directory to complete the authentication, and the user logs in immediately. All right, in terms of authentication flow, the user, we have a small diagram to make it more clear. So the user first authenticates to access a resource, an on-prem resource. The Active Directory request has been made. After that, the AD forwards the request to Silverfort desktop application. Silverfort prompts Azure AD SSO login to Entra ID's enterprise application. The Entra ID evaluates the authentication based on its policy and forwards it to Silverfort. Silverfort accepts the verdict and forwards it to the Active Directory, and the Active Directory grants or denies access based on the Entra ID's verdict. So this is how it works. Now all the applications and resources are in Entra ID as we expect them to. All right, let's see another example. So here we can see an example for a shared folder, which is basically something that is really in common use among our customers. So here the user tried to get into the shared folder in the on-premise Active Directory. Silverfort bridge policy is triggered, and we can see an MFA request made by Silverfort Authenticator. The user clicks to sign in, and now the user gets an Entra ID number matching test. The user types the number in Microsoft Authenticator, the MFA approved, and now he can see the folder content, as we can see now. So this is also a really common use case among our customers. We got really good feedback on that. All right. All right, so the bridge integration uses an Entra ID enterprise application in order to mediate between Silverfort and Entra ID. And basically, this is a connector. Silverfort offers you two different methods to establish this connection. The first method would be the automatic bridge, which basically asks you to give Silverfort write permissions for your Entra ID console. And then Silverfort automatically creates those mediate application for each resource. Another method that we offer you is the manual bridge, which asks you to give Silverfort lower permissions than the automatic bridge. But you need to create those mediate application by yourself, and then assign each Silverfort policy to an enterprise application created by you. Each one of those two methods is configured differently. So again, if you are interested in one of them, there is a lot of information in our documentation portal, and also you can contact your customer success manager in order to figure out what are the differences more deeply and figure out what is the right method for your usage, what is best for you, basically. All right, so in terms of prerequisites before the configuration of this integration, you basically will need three main things. The first one would be an Entra ID console admin permission. You also need an Entra ID tenant and tenant ID. And lastly, so you should have Silverfort desktop application on each endpoint that's using this feature, which is basically the agent that works with this that mediate between Entra ID and Silverfort admin console. In terms of configuration, our configuration is divided into three main parts. The first part is creating an Entra ID app registration, which acts as the connector to Silverfort dashboard. This is how it looks like. You just need to configure, to enter the details here on the admin console of the connector that you created, and then create the bridge policies in the admin console. So here in the video, we are putting the information of the connector, and you can see here that the automatic Azure AD bridge configured successfully. This is how it works.
Ron, we have one question here.
Yes.
Does this work with Silverfort mobile app too, or is it only Silverfort desktop MFA app?
So currently it needs the agent on your desktop. So it works with Silverfort desktop application only. But one of the main things for next year in terms of roadmap and those things in the product team is to make sure that we can prepare the agentless version of the bridge. So this is a work in progress, but right now you should have the agent, the desktop application on each one of the endpoints that are using this feature. All right. So our customers' best practices are those examples. They use it for those purposes. You can see here in the screenshot from one of our customers that protect his SIM management tool with the Azure AD bridge, which is pretty much cool example. They also protect F5, vCenter, SAP management tools, file shares, and so much more. So where you can find more information after this webinar. So firstly, you can speak with your customer success manager to help you kickstart an Entra ID integration process. You can also use Silverfort Zendesk resources, our documentation portal, to learn more about the integration process. This is the right path for you. And that's it pretty much. Zev, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Ran. We actually have a few questions. So back to the sign-in logs integration. What kind of alerts does the sign-in logs provide?
Yeah, all right. On the sign-in log integration, we basically let you use Silverfort risk indicators, and they apply also for cloud authentications. So you can use all of our risk indicators like abnormal geolocation activity, abnormal MFA activity, Kerberos, old operation system, and so much more. So those kind of alerts are really relevant also for cloud authentications and resources.
Okay, cool. We have a few more questions. One person asked, so we're using Silverfort to protect our privileged users on-prem. I'm still not following the benefits of integrating Silverfort into Entra ID, considering all the conditional access controls available. How would
So what is the question?
he's pretty much just asking is what is he wants to get more of he wants to better understand the benefit of integrating Silverfort into Entra ID.
So actually it will help you deal with the hybrid environment. You can use conclusions from on-prem authentications, and you can apply that on cloud authentication as well. You can get more information of how users behave in different places. You can use risk indicators, which basically help you to monitor and control the authentication in your organization, to decide what is a legitimate authentication and what is not, and basically use all Silverfort features on Entra ID authentication, and the opposite as well. You can use Microsoft risk indicators as well, like geolocation activity and abnormal behavior, look for shell exploit attempts, and more.
Okay, we have a few more questions still left. How can Silverfort help me prevent phishing attacks that steal the Entra ID primary refresh token, the PRT?
So like Silverfort has the ITDR capabilities. We know how to detect abnormal behavior and all that, and all and different threat attempts. So this is something that we are pretty much hard work on. So we can use the same conclusions also for your cloud authentication, and be the brain that decide whether this authentication is legitimate or is it phishing. So yeah.
Okay, a few more questions also. Can you show the conditional access rules in Azure that redirect to on-prem?
So I have. So here we have like pretty much blur screenshot, but still. So we have conditional access rules for Office 365. We also for RDP and web applications, for file shares and remote PowerShell. And if you need a deeper dive into the conditional access and Silverfort policies, I recommend you to contact your customer success manager. Maybe we can arrange another meeting, maybe with me, to dive in and figure out what are the right conditional access rules for your organization.
Okay. Again, we have a few more questions. So the conditional access policy you configure in Entra, will it be applied to the user's access as well with the Entra ID bridge?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay, cool. And as of now, the last one, is there any more info on SAP management MFA that was mentioned in the presentation? For example, SAP, HANA, or ECC, or another SAP?
So we have several customers that protect their SAP management tools with the bridge integration. And it works actually pretty much good. Again, I recommend you to contact your customer success manager for deeper look on specifically SAP management tools, and we will implement together the right conditional access and Silverfort policies for that specific use case. It is absolutely possible and usable. Yeah.
And one last question, back to the sign-in logs. What kind of attack methods does the sign-in logs alert on?
All right, so signing logs is pretty much really cool integration. It alerts on various attack methods like log4shell, exploit attempts, like SMB enumeration, like curb roasting, like authentication spike, abnormal MFA activity, which all of them are risk indicator by Silverfort. So we can detect those kind of behavior among your logs and to attach the risk indicator for those authentication in order to prompt MFA or deny the whole authentication attempt. And that's basically it.
Sure. Awesome. That's all our questions that were asked. I want to thank everyone. Thanks for taking the time and joining us for this this workshop. We hope this was very helpful and educational on our Azure integrations. Expect an email with all the different collaterals we created and a recording of this webinar, especially for those who couldn't join. And thanks everyone again, and enjoy the rest of your day.